While we're waiting for everyone to come, I think we better sing a song. And this song, my dad used to sing to me and my friends, and we would roll our eyes and think it was crazy. Here we sit like birds in the wilderness, birds in the wilderness, birds in the wilderness. Here we sit like birds in the wilderness, waiting for the rest to come. Waiting for the rest to come. Waiting for the rest to come. Here we sit like birds in the wilderness, waiting for the rest to come. Second verse. Here we sit like zits on a teenager, zits on a teenager, zits on a teenager. Here we sit like zits on a teenager, waiting for the rest to come. Waiting for the rest to come. Waiting for the rest to come. Here we sit like zits on a teenager, waiting for the rest to come. Look, a few more people came. That's awesome. And while we're waiting, where's Meg? Come here. We're excited for tonight. There's some things I've never told before. So you're going to learn, and I'm going to learn, and it's going to be awesome. But Meg came up here because we have a special song for someone whose birthday it is today. It's Rachel Hedman's birthday. She's put this program together, and we're going to sing. Meg and I have a special song
that we stole from my nephew.
Are you ready? Hey you, it's your birthday, and we'll sing it all day long. Hey you, it's your birthday, and we'll shout it loud and strong. Hey you, it's your birthday, it's the specialest of things. On the playground of your life, may you always get the swing. Happy birthday, Rachel.
I'm 45 today.
Woo-hoo. Youngster. While we're waiting, please take your phones out and put them on silent. If they ring, you will be flogged and thrown into the stream in the back. Brandon, you can come up here if you want. I am scary.
Oh, we have a message from Cody Erekson saying, hello Cody, Stacy, Callie, and Haley.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
They're tuned in. Let's wait a minute or two.
Okay. So just kind of explain that we are going to start.
We are going to start at 7 o'clock. You know, I learned in the Bible a story about being late. And everyone thinks that Abraham and Isaac, when he took Isaac up to sacrifice him, that it's about sacrifice and obedience. No. Because he took him up, got the fire ready, laid Isaac there. What if the angel had been 3 minutes late? It would be a different story. So we're going to start here in just a few minutes. There's a few others that are planning on coming, and then we'll get started. So talk amongst yourselves. You'll hear. He did sing that song to me and my friends. You're going to hear lots of stories about me. There's a few on their way. Two minutes. Don't forget to turn your phones to quiet. Those of you that just came in, if your phone rings and we hear it, we will give you a flogging and you'll end up in the stream back here. So please turn your phones to silence. So glad you're here. Come in and sit down. How are you, Dave? All right. Everybody look like they're having a good time. Here come the latecomers. We can start after the...
Perfect. Hey, welcome. Oh, whoops. Okay. There's some benches here.
Benches, there's seats. You can snuggle on a blanket.
Snuggle. So are you going to be sitting down?
I'll start sitting, yeah. Then I'll stand up.
Okay, I'm going to do it like this. So we have a little bit different sound because it's connected right here. And so hopefully the people on YouTube, you can hear me. I can see it's at least partly working, so I'm doing my best here. But welcome to the 83rd Story Crossroads House Concert! Now, isn't this a glorious more, right? So I don't want to have much time to anything else except his stories, but I will tell people that you can donate. You can come to house concerts whether or not you donate, but if you go to storycrossroads.org/donate, then you can help out our story artists and also Story Crossroads. So it does help both ways. We appreciate everyone who has helped us in the past. We're going on our 10th festival, and we are in person in Salt Lake County, but we're hybrid, so we also stream out, and that's what we're doing as well. So we do have people joining us there or watching it later. So let's do a big woo to the people watching. Woo! All right, let's hear stories, and let's have a nice round of applause to Ted Erekson.
Yay! Now you don't want to just see my middle section. There you go. Okay, Abraham Lincoln once said, "All that I am and hope to be, I owe to my angel mother." I want to talk about my mom for a little bit. Called her Mama Lou. And she was an awesome mom. She couldn't cook. We always had the boxed Chef Boyardee stuff. In fact, when I got a little older and I went to a friend's house and they ordered pizza, I thought, this is strange, because my mom would get the box with the pizza dough that you mixed up, and it was like biscuits, and there was red sauce. It didn't have any flavor, it was just red. And I thought cheese on pizza was powdered, because that's what came in the box. And when I went to a friend's house, I went home and I was a little upset with my mom. She tried to pinch pennies. There were 6 of us kids. She would get milk from the milkman, and she would mix powdered milk half and half with the regular milk so she could double the milk. And she used to make chocolate chip cookies. That's one thing that she did really well. But see, back in the 60s, there was always a tin can on the stove. And when you cooked bacon, you dumped the bacon grease in the tin can so you could use it. Well, she thought she'd save money on Crisco and butter and used bacon grease in the chocolate chip cookies. It was awful. Those cookies lasted forever because she wouldn't make any more until they were all gone. And we all had to take turns. Who's going to eat the next one? Who's going to eat the next one? My mom was the disciplinarian. She was the disciplinarian, and she would get angry, and a vein on her forehead would start to throb, and her eyes would bug out. And I learned my full name from my mom. She would grit her teeth, and she would say, "Edward Elma Erekson." In fact, when I went to school for the first time and the teacher went through the roll, and she read the names, she said, "Edward Erekson?" I said, "No, it's pronounced like this. Edward Elma Erekson." My brother Dave and I, Dave was a year older than I, we shared a bedroom down in the basement. And we would get into trouble. And Mom would give us a whooping. Now, you don't hear much about that today, but back then we deserved it. We deserved it. But she would actually get our little belts, and she'd swat our butts with that belt. And one time we got into so much trouble that we ran down the stairs and into our room, and we quickly hid all the belts. Mom came in, her eyes were bugging out, that vein was throbbing, and she's looking for a belt, and she couldn't find one, and she left. And we thought, that's awesome. But then we looked up, and in the door frame was my mother. Her vein was throbbing. Her eyes were bugging out, and she had a fuller brush. If you don't know what a fuller brush is, they have bristles like nails. And she came in and she made us drop trowel, and she beat our bare butts with that bristle brush until they bled. Now this is my memory. Now, fast forward. Our kids are young and growing up. We always had dinner together. That's important to have dinner with your family. And we talk about this, and I tell them that my mom, Mama Lou, would beat my bare butt till it bled. And we went down to see Grandma and Grandpa, Grandma Lou. And Isaac, my oldest, he got up courage. He says, Grandma, is it true that you beat my dad's butt till it bled? And do you know what she said? Do I look like a woman that would do such a thing? And I said, yes, you do. She was always, when I would get in trouble, I would hear that, Edward, Elma, Erekson. And we did crazy things as kids. One time, me and my friend were out in his car driving around the neighborhood, and another neighborhood kid came up on his tote goat. That's from the 60s, a little motorcycle thing. And he threw an egg at the car. And me and my friend thought, all right, two can play at this game. We knew where he lived. So we went and got a dozen eggs each. We went and parked on the street, right under a street lamp. And we got out of the car, and we started chucking eggs at the house. And it was dark. Chucking eggs at the house. And then his dad came out the back fence. And we heard him say, hey, you boy! And when he said that, we turned and started tossing the eggs at the voice. And this is what we heard. Hey, you boy! We hit him right in the face. Luckily, we were under the lamp so he couldn't see us. We took off. And when I got home, I heard my name again. Edward Elmer Erekson. Scout camp was awesome when I was a kid. We'd drive up to Wyoming. And when we were in Wyoming, we had great scout leaders. We'd always stop to get fireworks, because a lot of fireworks were illegal in Utah back then. We've come a long way. And we got smoke bombs. And we were so excited. And we were all congregated at my house, and just down the hill, our neighbors were there, and their car was out front, and their windows were rolled down. And my friend said, let's just throw one in the back seat, and the smoke will come out, and it'll be awesome. And of course, we all said, yes, that would be awesome. So he got on his bike, and we lit that smoke bomb. It was a green one. And he rode down quick, threw it in the back of the seat, and he rode off. And we're all standing there just waiting for the excitement to happen. And then all of a sudden, this green, billowing smoke came out of that car. And we're like, hey, there's smoke coming out of your car. And they were out front watering their flowers. And then we saw the flames come up to the roof of the car. And all I could hear was, Edward Elmer Erekson! There's a migration of monarch butterflies that comes from Mexico. And there were thousands of them. And me and my friends called each other. Now, when we called each other, we didn't have cell phones. There was a phone on the wall that had a long... We called each other, let's go out and get these butterflies. So we all went out with our tennis rackets. And we were harvesting those butterflies. It was awesome and so beautiful. It was just so beautiful. But again, I heard, Edward Elmer Erekson! Me and my friends and my brother Dave, we would do some crazy things. My best friend Tom, my brother Dave. In junior high, in wood shop, we made bows and arrows. I don't think you see that anymore today, but we made bows and arrows, and they were pretty good. We made bows and arrows, and me and my friend Tom had raised some chickens just behind our fence, big goalie area in our backyard. And my mom didn't like the chickens because they did more than just lay eggs. So we decided, okay, we're going to harvest these chickens. And we thought, at that time, Jeremiah Johnson, the movie, had just come out with Robert Redford. And he went, Jeremiah Johnson went up into the mountains. betting on forgetting all his troubles and his woes. But when we watched that, it was amazing. He grabbed fish right out of the water and he ate them. I mean, he was the mighty hunter, and we wanted to be mighty hunters of these chickens. So we took the chickens out in the middle of this big gully area, and we got our bows and arrows, and we set the chickens down, and we counted to 100 with our eyes closed. And when we opened our eyes, they were pecking at our feet. And it was really hard to shoot them from there. Hung those chickens up in the garage, and then I heard, Edward Erekson! I always wanted to be a mighty hunter. Fast forward. We had just moved into this house. It's been a few years, and our kids, Isaac was married, Rachel and Ishmael went on their missions, and we were empty nesters. And we had this little area over here. I'm like, Meg, let's get some chickens. Let's get some chickens. Oh, and we got 7 chickens. It was so fun. I called them my ladies. They were just so, and 2 of them, there was Consuelo and Maria, and they didn't lay eggs, they laid huevos. And we loved our chickens. And I came out one day, and I went over, and something had got in the coop and tore 3 of our chickens apart, just in pieces. And I thought, I'm not going to have this. So I went and bought some traps, but I didn't buy the friendly live traps. I bought the big bear traps. And I figured if I put a little marshmallow right there, these raccoons will come up, and when they bite, it will break their neck, and that would be the end of them. So I set them all around the coop over here. Friday morning I got up. I'd go to the gym before I go to work. I looked out there, and there in front of the coop, laying in one of the traps, was a huge skunk. And I thought, he's dead. I'll go to work. I'll come home at lunch. I'll clean it up. It'll be great. I came home, and I went back here, and he was standing up with one of his paws caught in that trap. And I thought, oh no. And then I heard the song. Jeremiah Johnson went up into the mountains, betting on forgetting all his troubles and his woes. And I thought, I didn't have a gun at that time. I do now because of certain political issues going on. But I didn't then. I didn't have a gun. But I thought quick, I heard that if you cover the skunk with a blanket or a sheet, they won't spray you. If they don't see you, they can't spray you. So I went and got an old tablecloth. And I went upstairs. I said, Meg, you got to come out here. Here's our new video camcorder. Come out and film this, and we'll send it to the kids on their missions. And she came out, and she wouldn't get any closer than right here in the middle of the yard. I said, this is the button you press. And then I went to the garage, and I came out with a sledgehammer. And I figured if I covered the skunk with this tablecloth, I'd thump it a few times, and I'd be done. So Meg's here. I said, here's the button, press this button, and I slowly walked up with that blanket, and I covered the skunk. I was halfway there. This is awesome. And then I took that sledgehammer, boom, and when I came down with the sledgehammer, that tablecloth slipped up like this. His rear end came up, and his anus bloomed. Now, I learned a very good lesson at this time. Never do this when a skunk sprays you. It went in my mouth. It went all over my face, all over my arms. And it stunk so bad, I was screaming like a little girl. And Meg said, at least it didn't spray you in the face. I'm like, it's all over my face! But then I thought again, in that song, Jeremiah Johnson. And as that went in my mind, I thought, I got to kill it now. I'm going to have to come do this again. So I'm coughing and hacking, tears coming out my eyes, and I'm pounding on that skunk, and now he's dead. And I turned, and as I turned, the stink was so bad, and it was thick yellow oil all over me, and I could taste it. In fact, to this day, when on the freeway or the road you smell a skunk, I do this. I got about here, my pants were off. About there, my shirt. I ran naked into the house, up the stairs to the shower. We had to throw away the shower curtain. We had to throw away the scrubbies. We had to throw away the soap. It stunk so bad, and I'm scrubbing, but I got to get back to the bank because I'm supposed to close the bank. And we sat down to eat some lunch, and I said, Meg, do I stink? And she said, everything stinks! I said, well, at least we got the video. I told her to press the wrong button. I went back to the bank. I told them what happened. And, you know, when I tell this story, a lot of times when I say I thumped the skunk, everyone goes, oh, the poor skunk. I'm like, where were you when the chickens were torn apart? Just because it's furry and stinky. So they did that, but they lit candles in the bank, which was not legal. You're not supposed to have open flames in the bank. But the candles were going, and customers would come in and say, did you spray for bugs? Because it really stinks in here. So I went to Kmart, which was right there by the branch that I managed, and I went in, and I thought of those ads back in the 60s when I was a kid, the little vials of orange stuff that would descent anything. And I looked, they didn't have any. I looked everywhere, and then I ended up in the automotive department. And I was rubbing the green trees all over, trying to get rid of that stink. But as I was doing that, I heard my mom in my mind say, Edward Elmer Erekson. Me and my best friend Tom tried a lot of different things. I was cool in high school. I had hair down to here, and it was permed. My mom and Grandma Leah would come and perm our hair in the kitchen of our house, and that pungent smell of permanent and our hair in curlers, it was awesome. I looked like the lead singer in Nazareth. It was awesome. And me and Tom got into a lot of trouble, but we tried different things. You know, we thought, you know, someone has to eat something for the first time to see if it's good. Ever wonder who ate the first tomato or who ate the first egg? Oh, that came out of the chicken. Maybe we should try it for breakfast. So we tried some things, and we went and got a tin of smoked oysters. And we got some rapples, which is a caramel sheet that you would wrap around apples. And we thought, let's wrap the smoked oysters in the caramel and try it. I was so sick when I got home. My mom was very nice, but she still said, Edward Elmer Erekson. One time, my parents on a Sunday had gone to a different church meeting, and I was home by myself. I was 15, didn't have a license, but there was the truck and the camper parked in the driveway. And I thought, I called Tom, I said, Tom, let's go pick up some girls and just drive around, it'll be awesome. Got Tom, picked up the girls, and we drove all over. I was doing great. I knew how to drive. Dropped the girls off, and as I'm turning the corner to head back, there's another girl from school. And I turned and I waved like this, but when I waved, I went like this and hit two parked cars. Totaled them. But I was so scared I left. I went home. I didn't stay. But when my mom got home, again, my full legal name, Edward Elmer Erekson. It was a crazy time. Crazy time. But there were good times too. One Friday night, we were down visiting my mom and dad. I was much larger in stature at that time. And my brother-in-law and nephew said, we're going to go to Nutty Putty Cave. Why don't you come and do that with us tomorrow? I said, I don't have clothes. They said, we can get you some sweats. I said, okay. And tell me about the Nutty Putty Cave. Well, it's a big hole in the ground, and you climb down into the hole, and at the bottom of the hole is this narrow opening that you have to crawl through. And once you get through it, then it opens up. I said, I'll never fit. They said, look, here's this wingback chair. Crawl underneath this and get through it, and then you'll be okay. So right in the living room, I got, and I army crawled, and I mean, it was a tight fit. And I got through, and they were cheering me on, screaming, yay, yay. I said, okay, we'll go. And we went to Nutty Putty Cave. It's out past Lehigh, out in the middle of nowhere. And it's this big hole in the ground. And you have to climb down into the hole. It's about 15 feet into the hole. And then there's this opening. And I was terrified. And I crawled through, and when you crawl through, it opens up. It's a big circular cavern. It's like a volcanic opening. And you go down this cavern, and then it drops off, and you have to climb down this cliff. And then you go exploring. It was awesome. I mean, we turned our flashlights out, and you couldn't see anything. It was like dark, dark. And then it was time to go back. It was time to go back, and we got to the cliff. My brother and my nephew just scrambled up the cliff. And I started to climb up that cliff area, and I got stuck. I was wedged. I couldn't move. I was stuck. Now, in the Christian world, the word repent, we think it's got negative connotations. But the actual translation for the word repent is to turn, is to change. And I went through all the steps of repentance that I knew. I confessed, I've made a mistake. I wanted to be restored to the top. I wanted to go through all those things. And I wasn't getting anywhere. And I thought, I'll just die here, and my skeleton, my ribs will be like a ladder that people can use on this cliff later on. But then I learned something about that word repent. I changed my position. I turned. And when I turned, my brother and my nephew up top reached out, and they helped me up. My dad was getting nervous, and he was pushing me up. But I got up, and I got into that sunlight, and it was beautiful. It was awesome. So I learned that change is important. And all these stories I'm telling you about myself, I think I've changed. I think I've changed. Those of you of the LDS community, my dad's name happens to be Alma. My middle name is Alma. So Alma the Younger. So I was pretty rebellious. We did some pretty crazy things. We had a big storm drain in the back in the gully. And they had big metal bars to keep you out, but these were big drains. But we'd squeeze our heads between those bars, and we'd go and we'd play in those drains. And my mom did not think that was awesome. That throbbing vein was just throbbing all the time. Now, I was 4 years old, and my brother Dave was 5. 4 and 5. And to this day, my brother Dave is still 1 year older than I am. I was 4, he was 5, and we were in our room, and we were so sick. We had fevers, we had the swollen glands, we had the sore throats. We were so sick. And my mom came in the room and she said, look, get dressed. I'm going to take you to see Dr. Giddings at the Olympus Clinic. We loved going to the Olympus Clinic. The Olympus, every time you go to the doctors, they would give you a sucker. And that sucker made everything worth it. But thinking back as an adult, and my mom hated them, because they were safety suckers. They didn't have a stick, they had a little rope. So you couldn't poke your brother in the eye. But the rope, it would sag down and it would stick to your fingers and get all gooey and goopy, and Mom hated them. But we loved them because it made everything worth it. And we got dressed and we went out to the old green Rambler. Now when I grew up, we didn't have seat belts. Cars didn't have seat belts. But you didn't need them for this old green Rambler because the material on the back seat of that car had little pokey things like Velcro. And you throw the kids in the back and they'd stick. And you couldn't move. Mom threw us in the back and she got up and she started the car and we headed for the Olympus Clinic. When we got to the clinic, she got out and opened the door. She peeled us off the back seat and we walked up to the doors of the clinic. Now from this point forward in the story, Mom does not look us in the eye. She opened the doors and the odor wafted out. It smelled of formaldehyde that they were keeping all the body parts in the back in. We went in and there was a little people couch and there was a big people couch. Me and Dave sat on the little people couch. Mom sat on the big people couch. She did not look us in the eye. Me and Dave were doing this. And then we heard it. They were torturing a child in the back. We could hear it screaming. Me and Dave were doing this now. A nurse came out and said, Erekson. We stood up. Mom did not look us in the eye. We walked back to the examining room where we were looking around. Mom sat in the chair, threw up a magazine. She did not look us in the eye. We waited for several minutes, and in walked Dr. Giddings. And he had a satellite dish on his forehead. They hadn't even been invented yet. He had a satellite dish on his forehead, and he hit our knees with a hammer. He looked in our ears, and then he brought out 2 sticks with cotton swabs on the end. And he left the room. He was gone for about 15 minutes. And then he came back in. Well, Teddy and Dave, you have strep throat. And he left. And we're like, okay, where's our sucker? Mom didn't move. She did not look us in the eye. After several minutes, that seemed like an eternity, another nurse came in. Follow me. We got up and we followed her down the hallway, and then she turned down a dark corridor. She got to a door, a big metal door. And it had a window in it with chicken wire in it. And she unlocked the door. And when she opened the door, we could see the scratch marks on the inside of the door. We went inside the room. The door closed and locked behind us. Mom sat in the only chair, threw up the magazine. Me and Dave were looking around. Besides the chair my mom was in, there was a hospital gurney, a bed with the wheels on the bottom, and next to that was a big metal cabinet. And as we were looking around, the door unlocked and opened, and in she walked. Nurse June. I hate the month of June because of Nurse June. She had bright red hair like the flames of hell. She had deep blue eyes like the embers of a fire. And she had one of those faces where her lipstick went up, but her face went down. She opened the metal cabinet and she started fussing. We could hear metal and glass clanking. And then she turned like this, like we couldn't see. It was a big metal syringe like they use on cattle. And the needle was this long. She turned to me and she said, "Teddy, you're first." But what I heard her say was, now, when you go in for a shot nowadays, you roll up your sleeve, boop, 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 you're done. Not Nurse June. She wanted a bigger muscle. So while I was getting ready, she went to the other side of the room to get a running start. And she ran and she jammed it in, clear to the bone. My eyeballs were out to here. And she tried to squeeze it in, but because it was in the bone, she pulled it out just a little. And then she moved it around. Why did they move it around? The stuff inside the syringe was thick as honey. I know this for two reasons. One, as she pushed on the syringe, she made this sound. Ah! And two, as it went in, my cheek was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. When it was all in, she tried to pull it out, but because it was all swollen, she put her foot on my other cheek. And she made the sound again. Ah! She pulled it out. Blood went everywhere. I turned and looked at Dave. He passed out. He didn't even know he got a shot. And then Nurse June carefully slipped my little belt off, and I thought, am I going to get a whooping? And she put a tourniquet on my cheek. And as we were walking out, Mom did not look us in the eye. I said, "Just a minute, Mom." And I went over to the nurse station. "Can I have my sucker, please?" And they gave me a sucker. Great, purple, my favorite to this day. And I opened it, and I started to suck on it, and it got sticky and gooey. And Mom took us out to the car, and she threw us in the back seat. And she got in the front and started the car. She did not look us in the eye. She started the car, and we started going, and I peeled my hand and arm down best I could. And I was sucking on that sucker, and I could see my mom's hair in front of me, down the back of her seat. And I took that sucker. And that sucker made everything worth it. Now, my mom's been gone for 6 years. But every now and then, when I get in trouble, I hear, "Edward Elmer Erekson." Do we have any time left? 20 minutes? That's awesome. Okay. One of my grandkids' favorite stories, because I told you I'd share those, is by John Seska. I don't even know if I'm saying it correctly. John Seska, and maybe you're familiar with his writings, he wrote Stinky Cheese Man and Other Fairly Stupid Tales. But he wrote The Frog Prince Continued. And it begins with an ending. And the princess kissed the frog, and he turned into a handsome prince, and they lived happily ever after. The end. All right, they lived happily for a little while. All right, they didn't live happily ever after at all. They were miserable. The princess was constantly going through the castle. Oh, seriously, you're eating those bugs and that thing, that hopping you do? Gag me. Constantly complaining. And the frog prince, he just wanted to go visit his friends. You never want to leave the castle. I just want to go visit my friends and buddies down at the swamp. Oh, like seriously, go to the swamp and get my hair, like all icky. Constantly bickering back and forth. And that night, the frog prince read his story and he reread his story. And they lived happily ever after. Happily. And he fell asleep. The next morning, the princess threw a fit. Oh, like seriously, look what I found in your pants pocket. A lily pad. Gag me. I don't know why I ever kissed your slimy frog lips. I wish you were still a frog. Still a frog, that's it. And he hopped out of bed and he got on his clothes. And he ran out into the dark forest to find a witch to turn him back into a frog. And he hadn't gone very far. And he found a witch. And he went right up to her. Miss Witch, excuse me. I'm the frog prince. Well, you don't look like a frog, do you? Frogs are green and slimy. I'm not a frog. I'm the frog prince, and I need to turn me back into a frog so I can live happily ever after. Oh, you're a prince, are you? Well, you're not perhaps going to kiss Sleeping Beauty. No, I've already been kissed. That's the problem. Well, a prince is still a prince, and I can't have you breaking that spell. And she turned her gnarled finger at him, and he turned and ran further into the forest. And as he ran, he thought back at the castle, how early in the morning he would wake up, and he'd look over and see his princess sleeping. And he ran, and he got to a shack in the middle of the forest, and the door was just barely open, and he pushed open the door, and he went inside the shack, and there on the wall was a mirror, and next to that was another mirror. That's right, there was a mirror on the wall. And in the corner there was a witch, and he went right up to Miss Witch, excuse me. I'm the frog prince. Well, you don't look like a frog, do you? Frogs are green and slimy. I'm not a frog. I'm the frog prince, and I need to turn me back into a frog so I can live happily ever after. Oh, you're a prince, are you? Well, I can't have you helping Snow White. So why don't you have a bite of this apple? And the apple was dripping with pus and poison. And he knew that story as well, and he turned and he ran out of the shack. And as he ran further into the forest, he thought back at the castle of the princess, the apple of his eye. He ran and he came to a clearing. And in that clearing was this funny-looking cottage. And out front of the cottage there was a garden. And in the garden there was a witch. A big witch. And he went right up to her. Miss Witch, excuse me, I'm the frog. Well, if you're a frog, I'm the Queen of England. I'm not a frog. I'm the frog prince, and I need to turn me back into a frog so I can live happily ever after. Do you have the power, and will you do it? He was getting a little miffed right now. Oh, yes, I can do that. But first, let's go inside for some tea and crumpets. And she waddled inside. He followed behind her, and he got to the steps, and they were sticky. And he broke off a piece of the windowsill. Gingerbread. Miss Witch, do you happen to know some children by the name of Hansel and Gretel? Oh, yes, they're coming for dinner later tonight. He knew that story as well, and he turned and he ran. But as he ran, he looked over his shoulder at the House of Sweets and thought back at the castle of his sweetheart, the princess. He ran, and it was getting dark. It was getting dark, and the forest was getting thick, but there was a light up in the road ahead. And as he got closer to the light, he could see in that light that there was a beautiful woman. She had a long gown on and big hair. And she had a stick with sparks flying out of it. And there were pumpkins strewn at her feet. And he went right up to her. Madam, excuse me. I'm the frog prince. You don't look like a frog, do you? The frogs are green and slimy, And they have flippers. You don't have any flippers. I'm not a frog. I'm the frog prince. And I need you to turn me back into a frog so we can live happily ever after. Well, I've never done frogs before. In fact, I was on my way to the village to help a young maiden go to the ball. But I give it a try. Here goes. And she pointed that wand at him, and a bolt of lightning came out and struck him. And he started to glow. And she turned him into a strong, handsome carriage, and then she disappeared. And there he sat in the middle of a forest as a carriage, feeling sorry for himself. Oh, what an idiot I am. I could be back at the castle, eating popcorn, sitting on the sofa, watching videos with my princess. But instead I'll spend the rest of my days here in the forest as a carriage, and I'll sit and rot. In fact, the children from the village will come out and play and wet their pants all over me. He was miserable. He was miserable. But just then, the clock down in Village Square struck midnight. Dong. When it struck midnight, he transformed back into the Frog Prince. He turned and he ran back through the forest, got to the castle, threw open the doors, and there she was. Oh, like, seriously, do you know what time it is? The food on the table is cold. Gag me with a spoon, and look at your gnarly clothes. They're all, like gnarly. And as he looked at her, he thought to himself, this is the princess I love to watch sleeping. This is the princess, the apple of my eye. This is the princess, my sweetheart. This is the princess that believed me when no one else would. This is the princess that kissed my slimy frog lips. And he threw up his arms, and he wrapped them around her, and he gave her a big kiss. And they both turned into frogs and hopped off happily ever after. Speaking of frogs, this is another favorite of the grandkids. This is the wide-mouthed frog. One morning, the wide-mouthed frog woke up, and he ate his breakfast, flies. And he thought, I wonder what the other animals eat. So he hopped out onto the road, and he started going down the road. And he hadn't gone very far, and there was Mrs. Cow chewing on the grass. Hello, Mrs. Cow! I'm the wide-mouthed frog. What do cows eat? We eat hay and grass and chew our cud. Oh, is that so? Said the wide-mouthed frog. And he hopped further down the road. And right there in the road was Mrs. Chicken. Hello, Mrs. Chicken. I'm the wide-mouthed frog. What do chickens eat? We eat seeds and grain and little rocks. Oh, is that so? Said the wide-mouthed frog. And he hopped further down the road. And there under the shade of the old apple tree was an old hound dog. And he was sleeping. He was sleeping so soundly. And the wide-mouthed frog crept up. Hello, Mr. Hound Dog! What do hound dogs eat? We eat dog food and meat and garbage. Oh, is that so? Said wide-mouthed frog. And he went back out on the road and he was hopping. And there in the middle of the road was an armadillo smashed. Hello, Mr. Armadillo! What do armadillos eat? Oh, is that so? Said the wide-mouthed frog. And he hopped further down the road. And he hopped further and he came to the bend in the road right up against the swamp. And he stopped there at the bend and up came Mr. Alligator. Hello, Mr. Alligator! What do alligators eat? Ooh, we eat wide-mouthed frogs. Oh, is that so? One more story, because I heard my mom's voice when this happened. When my mother-in-law passed, and she was a sweetheart. She was an amazing lady. The year she died, she had a big garden in her backyard, and she worked in that garden, and she loved it. And we went to visit her one time, and she was telling us, yeah, I was out in the garden, and I fell, and her knees were bad, and she couldn't get up. I said, what'd you do, Mom? And she said, well, I figured someone would be there in a few hours, and since I was down there, I thought I may as well weed. So she crawled around weeding the garden until someone came. But when she passed, she was an amazing lady. She came up one time to show us how to make buttermints. Buttermints are tricky. She would do the taffy, the vinegar taffy, and she had asbestos for hands. Because she'd always say, here, you do it. I'm like, they're blistered already. I mean, and she would just pull that, but it's like making taffy, but it has to be certain temperature, and you have to pull it so long, and then it looks like taffy, it feels like taffy, but then you put it in a fridge, and if you've done it right, it blooms, and it becomes that melt-away buttermint that is just so delicious. And she had the magic touch. Her fingers had the magic touch. She was amazing. We could never get it right, and to this day we still can't get it right. But we were down in Holiday, and Meg, it was the day before the viewing, and Meg said, I got to go to the funeral home to make some last-minute things, and so I said, okay, I'll go with you. So we went in, and this nice lady at the mortuary, Meg and her talked, and when they finished, I said, can I just ask a question? Is she in the other room? She said, well, she's here. I said, you know, she has the magic touch. And I brought some pruning shears. If I could just take one of her fingers, just so I could have the magic touch. Now, I learned from that morticians don't have a sense of humor at all. She said, you can't do that. That's desecration. I said, okay, I'm sorry. I went too far. How about if I just took a mold of her finger? No, you can't go in there. So the day of reviewing, had my suit coat on. One of the few times I dressed out, I had suit coat on. But I had some pruning shears in the pocket, and I would just pull them out and see if she was watching. Never got her finger. But even then, when I pulled those pruning shears out, I heard my mom, Edward, Elma, Erekson. You guys have been great. Thank you. Now, we do have some treats in celebration of a birthday. We got some treats. Our book, My Boy Jesus, they're for sale over here. There's a Venmo. You can scan it, or you can give us cash, or you can give us a promise, and we know where you live. They're $25 each. They're right here. And then Rachel's got some information about Story Crossroads over here as well. Story Crossroads is a great organization. They do a lot of fun stuff, and thank you for coming.
So just to let you know, before you go home, make sure you grab one of these bookmarks. It tells you what we do throughout the year, and almost everything is hybrid or virtual. So even if you don't want to go to Salt Lake County, then you have other options. Or sometimes, as you notice, we actually travel. So the most north we have ever gone for these house concerts has now been Providence. It used to be Ogden.
Yay!
So if you want to host a house concert, we can do that. And then what we also can do too is go south. The most south that we've had our house concert so far has been Payson, Utah. So we have really gone all over, and it's just, 83. We're going to be going on to our 84th house concert. It will be in September. It's being finalized. But if you take this and you scan this or go to the web page, you can see what's next. So we're actually going to be doing story fortune tellings at the Utah Renaissance Fair, if any of you go to those kinds of things. Every month we have a house concert. So even if it's not up yet, you know it's going to be up soon. So very, very soon, we're going to have our September one, which is going to be Eclipse Stories. So I know that a few months back, we had one, right? Who went and actually saw it or kind of took time for it? The eclipse? Maybe? Yeah? So this will be a mixture of stories, of personal experience as well as those traditional stories. And then October, we tend to have more scary stories, and it's just going to be a lot of fun. So we want to thank the Erekson family here. Big round of applause to Ted and to Meg. Woo! All right. We also want to thank the people who joined us online. Woo! Yay! We love you. Sorry, we can't give you refreshments. Just go eat something over there. And in the meantime, mingle with each other, have fun, because part of the storytelling experience is being able to tell stories afterwards too. So thank you so much, everybody. I think you're going to want to go this way. Check out Ted's book. Woo!
You can stay as long as you like. If you brought sleeping bags, we can put you on the floor inside or out back here, whatever you want to do. Thanks, everybody.